Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I'm here sitting next to my fantastic partner.
Born in the USA, Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, and DYMusicRadio.com. I'm sitting up here with my wonderful co-host, and what are we talking about today, sir?
Well, I'm so delighted to see you as always, my brother.
Likewise.
For those that can't see my brother Eddie, he is rocking the most patriotic of funkiest of hats. Oh, I'm living, and it's all about the U.S. So it's so funny you say that. Let's jump out right in front, shall we? First, let us take a moment to let our listeners and our viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here, not only giving you fantastic music, but we're here to be your #1 source for music business news and trends from around the globe. If you take a moment, we'll appreciate it if you can like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or leave a 5-star review on our podcast. That would be most appreciated. All right, so speaking of the USA, we have to talk about a fascinating yet dismal article that was published by...
How can fascinating and dismal come?
Well, because it's fascinating what's happening in the music business, yet it displays dismal news.
Dismal news.
Yeah. So it's both of those things together. So Rolling Stone magazine published an article that cites a report that talks about sales as it relates to music. In the U.S., when they're talking about music, they're speaking primarily of downloadable music, CD, and vinyl. Okay, those three things. They at this point in the year will do an analysis of the first half of this year as it relates to, or as compared to last year's first half. Okay, so the report says the following thing.
Okay,
that music consisting of download, CD, and vinyl is down nearly 26%, 25.8 to be exact, from this time last year. Of that, you have CD album. The CD album itself is down 41.5%, almost half of what it was earning.
So these are digital albums? And,
this is physical.
Physical, okay.
This is all physical stuff. And what they're basically saying is that music overall in the physical realm is down nearly 26%. And then when you think about just CD, which used to be king, there was a time when CD was humongous. And that has brought in 41.5% less than what it did last year. So what does that mean? In these episodes, we've been talking a lot about the consolidation of power, how many companies are starting to buy each other up, merging and creating really powerful 1 or 2 or 3 juggernauts, and what that means for monopoly. But we also talk about what happens in the course of music. You see, right now, what we're witnessing is a diminishment, reduction in sales as it relates to physical goods. So over time, we won't have physical goods at all. Because right now, CD, even though it's lessened in terms of what it brought in, it still brought in $246 million. So think, oh, that's a lot of money. Well, it used to bring...
Well, that's still because a lot of people, we may think they're not quite with the digital age, in regards to computers and the iPhones and the Androids and all that type of stuff.
Or it's done in tandem. So in other words, they'll subscribe to a service and they're still purchasing CDs. You never know why or what causes it. But $246 million worth of sales of CDs.
And that's a lot of sales.
That's a lot of sales. But what they're saying is last year was nearly $500 million. So what we're seeing is downward spiral of value when it comes to physical goods. And I feel like what we're seeing is an evaporation of physical goods. And it'll be only streaming because now, we've talked about this before, but you don't need to own anything if you can access it at any time that you want. And especially now with the world being all about storage because you don't have physical CDs to think about. Now companies like, we were talking about Chinese outfits like Tencent Holdings, they have a competitor now that's really taken on storage online. They're out of China, NetEase is their name, and they're basically a cloud service. So I'm jumping around here, but I want you to understand what's happening. Because we're diminishing physical goods and relying more on streaming music, there's still a need for storage, but it's only online.
And that's so true because Google is a master. They have become masters at it, especially with photographs and videos and all of that. once you load that stuff up, if you are a member or you affiliated with them in some type of way, and it's free.
Yes.
It automatically uploads your
Exactly.
pictures to an outside storage venue. Now, if you feel safe with that, it happens. But the pictures that you don't want up there, you can delete.
Exactly. And so the thing becomes, all right, so we don't have physical storage needs like we once had in terms of music, because I don't know about you, but I still have, you can't see it in the camera right now, but right to my left is a huge shelf of a bunch of vinyl records, because I still collect vinyl. I also have CD magazines as well as some shelving of CDs in my home. But what they're doing now is taking all that and transferring that online. Our young people are not dealing with these storage these storage issues. It's you or I that are still into the physical product. But what we're seeing again is basically it's being decimated out.
And you hit it right
years.
on the key point. It's about the millennials and this new generation of youth that are coming up that are really changing the game, because they are more astute, where many of us, we're still being kicked and pushed to try and learn some of these new mechanics of what's going on.
Exactly.
So, you know, it may all make sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense, especially when you break down what the next, imagine what it might look like in the next 5 years. So we're definitely going to be dependent upon streaming music more and more, and less upon physical goods. You might see some of these items becoming garnering a high price if you do like a Craigslist or like eBay or something. For example, Mike Nervous, shout out to Mark Weiss, Nervous Records. He just posted that one of the memorabilia jacket from the Nervous days is going for $1,200 online. So you might see physical goods become this sort of rare, treasured, high-priced kind of item.
Don't let us talk about the treasure we passed by with the memorabilia from West End Records, but you got the sign now.
Yes, I had the sign. Yes, no, I remember that. What Eddie is referring to is, well, you can tell the story about the memorabilia.
Oh, well, it just so happened that Adam was given the option to get some of the bearings that were held by Mel Sharon.
Yes.
Who passed away, R.I.P.
Yes.
Founder of the Paradise Garage, wrote the book,
Keep On Dancing.
Keep On Dancing.
Yep. Co-founder of West End Records.
Co-founder of West End Records.
Yep.
Very instrumental during the 50s and the 40s with pushing R&B music and all of that type of stuff, and then he started his own label. But anyway, upon his death, there were certain items that were left to it, and one of the items was a what do you call it? A light,
like a light box.
A light box.
Yeah.
And on the
large one.
It was a large one, and it was one of the boxes that they would set out in front of the club.
Yes. So yeah, it wasn't something we could carry. Trust we tried.
No, it was not.
All right, well, let's take a break right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We'll break down more of this music business news. See you when you come back.
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, dywildmusicradio.com, the Freedom Radio Music Hour.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of 91.6 FM. I'm one of your co-hosts, Eddie Nicholas, and I'm here with my fantastic and knowledgeable, you know this man just knows everything about
Hardly.
news and all of that stuff, the one and only Mr.
Adam Cruz, and we're live and direct right here on Capital Radio 91.6 FM and on the web at dywildmusicradio.com. We got to jump right out in front. We were talking about what was going on in the U.S. We touched upon a little bit of what's going on in China, and now let's jump to Europe and talk about what's going on there.
We're just going globally.
We are. I'm glad you brought your passport.
Oh, yeah.
So on episodes prior, we were talking about Europe and their issue with YouTube as it relates to value gap. Now, you remember this whole discussion. In short, YouTube makes a ton of money on advertisement, and they agree to pay a portion to artists. But while they're doing that, on a per-user basis, they're actually paying less than they ought to as compared to the other streaming services. What I'm talking about is not the advertising dollars. I'm talking about the royalties that are earned when music is played or heard on a YouTube video. YouTube agrees to pay artists and labels a fraction of a penny per stream. And so in Europe, they have a big issue in what's called value gap, because it's the amount of money that YouTube earns in advertisement because of the music they play versus how much they're paying per artist. So for a long time, we were waiting for Europe to tell us an answer about all this issue. And so we finally did in the version of what's called Article 13. It's a legislative bill, and it basically says, in short, short, that the Europe will be placing more of a responsibility on YouTube for the content that is uploaded. YouTube, not wanting to be liable for a lawsuit in any way, they have what's called that Content ID system. You remember that, right? Talk about what Content ID system is. Basically, that copyright infringement. Remember we talked about
that if you have information that pertains to someone else, that YouTube has the right to pull that information down, but at the same token to put it up. But their protection is that another party has posted it, and that they are basically just an entity that allows people to upload information.
Exactly.
And that if there is an issue, you have to go after that person that put the information up. But YouTube will put up a disclaimer and we'll take it down if there's cause for copyright infringement.
Yes. So what's happening now is the issue that once it's live, that content is live, it's up for a little bit of time before it's taken down. And it's only taken down if there's a claim made. And you see, they use these tracking system, but it's not 100% foolproof. So sometimes videos live on there for a while before they're taken down. And so in Europe, that presents a big problem when you consider there's like 700 videos per minute being uploaded on YouTube. So it's a lot. So what they're saying is this: Article 13 will prevent the content from being uploaded to begin with. Why? Because it'll use that tracking system before it goes up to say, hey, wait a minute, that contains an Eddie Nicholas song or an Adam Cruz song. You don't own that copyright, therefore the video nobody ever sees it. So people are outraged, as you can imagine, because YouTube really touted itself as being this place of creativity, sharing content, and all the like. But because there's lawsuits pending, they had to do something about that, especially as large as Europe is. Europe had to do something to protect artists. So they create this Article 13. The other thing that we've never talked about on the show until now is Article 11.
Okay.
So Europe has something on the table called a link tax. And this is what folks like the New York Times, Washington Post, publishers like that of articles, news articles, they notice that they're losing millions of dollars because on Facebook and Google News and others, they are being hit hard with what's called the preview text. You know that preview text before you click through to tell you more about the article? It's like a few sentences. Well, if you think about it, it never dawned on me that nobody's reading these articles anymore in full because they only get the news from previews.
Well, I'm going to tell you why nobody's reading these articles, because once you start reading these articles, it's like a click and bait thing, and you have to go through so many different levels, and you get fed up.
Yes, and
a lot of the articles are quite good in their capturing, and you want to read them, but by the time you get to the third page or something like the hell with it.
Well, yes, and then the other side too is sometimes in the name of what you're saying in terms of clickbaits, you can click through an article thinking that the headline or the preview is giving you an insight on what it is, but when you actually read it, it's actually something that's quite different than what when the headline or the preview suggests. So you feel duped in that instance. So over time, between what Eddie's describing and what I'm describing, users are turned off in terms of clicking through to read the full article. But if you're a publisher like the Washington Post or the New York Times, they are losing a lot of money because folks are just not bothering to click through. So what Article 11 is saying is, let's create a tax. So these outfits, the publishers themselves, would charge a tax to Facebook and Google News to allow that ability, the preview, to be read. Without that tax being paid, there'd be no preview, because they're saying that if you don't know what's ahead, you're going to click through more than if you read a little of the preview. So it passed. It's up for a final vote. There's an initial vote that happened, that passed, as well as Article 13 passed, but the final vote will happen in January 2019.
Now,
and if it becomes law...
How does that affect us here in the States?
Well, it'll affect us. It doesn't affect us because we're not in Europe. But our content, it's affecting us because our content, when it arrives in Europe's eyes, it will be curtailed depending on what it is. So let's say, because you're... a journalist as well, and you get hired by New York Times to do a piece, your piece will not be viewed in Europe because there is a tax that these conglomerates will choose to pay or not pay.
Okay, got you.
So that's changing the dynamic of what we think of things going viral. Now it changes that whole landscape and what we think about with the news media and articles that you want to read. Now there's this tax that's been put in place that if it becomes law, it will change what we're able to see in different countries.
And not only that, if people are really paying attention, the news is now snatching everything from social media. You know, and making that news.
Well, that's a great point. My last point about this was going to be that what YouTube was going to do, instead of trying to take a little bit of a fine-tooth comb to the whole situation, they'll just create a sledgehammer effect and just will prohibit any of that stuff being visible on the platforms. So what does that mean? That means that they're not going to bother to decipher which content they're going to put up, what's previewable versus not, et cetera, et cetera. They'll just not make it available.
If it falls into a certain category that's being questioned.
Yeah, a quick algorithm will just kill that. Yeah, why be bothered? So that's a big problem, because if you live in Europe, now you're basically being, you have an inability to access news.
Hence, when you go on Facebook and you get these calls that your material has been either deleted or what is the word where they squelch it, where they turn off the sound.
Yes, muted.
Muted, where they mute your material and it says muted in specific countries.
Yes.
Where you go to some, and you look at the list, you see all these hundreds of countries outside the United States that people that want to view your video can't hear.
Right. So there's a lot of ramifications to these bills that on the surface, you're happy that Europe is finally doing something to deal with value gap, because it is a real issue. But on the other side, we're essentially squelching creativity. We're making it nearly impossible to engage. What YouTube is doing in an effort to encourage creativity is they're offering these libraries of copyright-free songs that you can choose from. And then it's only a matter of time before they'll offer royalty-free clips that you can choose from, and you could sort of mash up and make your own things from there. But they're hoping that in the long term, they could create what's called clean content. That means content that isn't triggering the copyright infringement system. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, let's break down more of this music business news right here. Where?
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, dwildmusicradio.com, and Freedom Radio Hour. Come on, man.
Exactly.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio, 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, and on the web at dwildmusicradio.com. You're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour, your #1 source for music business news and trends from around the globe. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I'm here next to my fantastic partner,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people? And we are so glad that you have stuck around and you're back with us. Let's jump right into it, Eddie.
Well, we got to talk about a big topic that I think is plaguing house music. You see, here on the Freedom Radio Hour, we love our house music. We love vocals, we love tracks, they're non-vocals, we love slower tempos, something soulful in its nature. We love all that kind of dance music. So in our community, I've been dying to talk about this, and I want to gauge your opinion. I purposely didn't give any hints of what we were talking about today to Eddie, because I wanted to gauge his real reaction. It's around this idea of support. You know, here in house music, we often will use social media or personally, while we're in contact with someone, talk about the theme of support. We say, you know, we're having a party here, or a new release is coming here. Support this party or support this artist. And so we start to delve deeper and deeper into what this term support means. And in a real term, when you look at the dictionary definition, support is basically providing the foundation for other things to build from it. Support is really, if you look at things like a leg up, so the foundation's there, and then you can build from there like a ladder, right? So support is, a strong support system is there so that when, for example, if you build a home, you have a strong foundation, right? But in the case of music, especially in the arts, we tend to use the support to create what's called obligatory purchasing. And I made this up, but I've been dying to talk about this with you because I know you know what I mean. What I mean by obligatory purchasing is just that. This notion that because it's in house music and you might be affiliated with others in the scene, or you might just be a fan of the music, that somehow new releases create this, is obligating you to buy it just because it's made in this community. And so you and I are always very careful about this because we know that content is king. That means that if it's a hot track or a hot vocal, you'll buy that. There's never a word that enters your brain when you click buy that says, I'm supporting this. You're going, this is a hot track. For example, if you think on a corporate level, like the Gap or Nike, when they're going, when they want you to buy a sneaker, they don't say support Nike. They might make a political statement. Nowadays, it's becoming very trendy to be political. But by and large, they're not saying support Nike. They're saying buy the new athletic trainer or whatever it's called, and you choose to buy it or not. But in house music in particular, and in the arts in general, we tend to have this idea of support. Now, I wanted to change the word to patronize, because what you're doing is patronizing a business. Now, my first question to you, Eddie, do you feel like there's this sort of obligatory sense of wanting to support other people, even though you may not always care for their material?
Well, being an artist myself, you always want people to support. And in order to get support, you have to support. And oftentimes you may have to cross that barrier to get that support into different genres or different means, or even deal with different people that are outside of the house community. While we would love for the house community to be supportive, and in many cases they are, to their dedicated DJs, their dedicated record labels that they prefer and that they like, and in specific to a type of music that they like, regardless if it's old club, new club, or whatever. There's always going to be new music. It's just a matter of people subjugating what's hot and what's not.
Yes,
and we have a tendency to follow those people that we see as being hot.
Yes, and then in general, if you are, say, going with your example, supportive of one another, you may come across a new release where you don't care for that song, but you're in support of the person. So it becomes a weird thing, because now do you buy the track because you like the artist, or do you not? The other thing is, if you're choosing what you're going to patronize or not, in terms of a business, shouldn't it be only the content that's the driver, not who the person really is?
Well, sadly, we would hope that is, but people put their personal thoughts into it, and if they don't like it, then I'm not going to play it. So therefore, a mass audience of people are not given the privilege to make that decision.
Yeah.
Even given the chance to hear. Whereas, you may hear something played on the radio. The DJ might not like it, but then the people that hear it start calling in, requesting it.
Exactly.
And I
think that's a great nuanced point, because really that's the reality we live in. Art is always this subjective thing. What's one person's treasure is another person's trash. So that's what art is about. And our job in art is to gravitate towards the pieces, the music, the visual stimulation that we get that speaks to our lives in some way, right? So yeah.
And again, we always want the DJs to tell a story, but sometimes the stories just become the same old stories because they're playing the same old music.
Yeah, and I think what I wanted, the reason why I'm bringing up support is I was seeing some memes recently posted on social media that says, support your local businesses. You want to see who your real friends are? Start a business. And they make these memes and people go, amen, so true, yep, I agree. But I also take a step back and think about those quotes, and it actually perpetuates a myth, an obligatory culture where you're supporting someone just because they're in business, as opposed to patronizing a product or business that you want. Exactly. And so one of the comments from a dear friend of mine under one of those memes was like, I'm not obliged to support anything.
No.
I will purchase or support or patronize whatever business that resonates with my life, is just, to your point, will speak to me. Well, it's something I need. So you putting that out there is not making me want to support your business more. It's actually making me want to support it less, because I see that it's not about the product you're putting out. It's about the other people you think should be co-signing your product.
In my case, in our case, we're constantly putting out music. And yes, we've sent stuff to radio stations, but because of personal tastes, things are not justified in their eyes to be put
I agree.
In their set.
And I also argue that's not our business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our business is not to say who's playing and who's not. In a general sense, yes, you want to pay attention to your business and say, okay, of the list of radio stations, these are the songs I sent out. These are the stations that played it. These are the stations that didn't. Do that due diligence.
You want
yes.
feedback. People always want feedback.
They always want feedback. But after that, it's not your business to be concerned with who is supporting you or not. After that analysis is done. Why? Because that shouldn't be why you put out music or paint a painting or write a book, right?
Because if you do, you start questioning your value and your worth compared to seeing in other people's eyes. And that's something as artiste with an E that you cannot do.
Exactly.
You know, you always have to just keep pushing, keep forward, and not letting people degenerate or denigrate what you do and that you're pleased with. So, you know, like we always say to artists, keep on trucking, keep on pushing, keep on putting your stuff out.
It's a great point.
Because it's going to fall on somebody's ears.
Right.
And it's going to fall on a group of people's ears, and it's going to fall on a group that you might not even think is part or listening to that particular genre that you're doing.
That's right.
And it just may fit in someplace else.
Exactly. Well, that's all the time we have. Definitely make it your business to check out freedomradiohour.com. Download our free app for Android and iPhone users. It has all of our episodes, our podcasts, our merch, and our new music. Check out the Do You Want to Dance LP from my brother Eddie Nicholas, out everywhere. Check out my brand new single, Trust Your Instincts, Vote. And then I'll be also announcing some major news and episodes to come. So stay tuned right here on the Freedom Radio Hour.
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, BeWildMusicRadio.com, and the Freedom Radio Hour. Peace, love, and care.
That's right. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead.